A confrontation at Gadua between the FCT Minister Nyesom Wike and a serving naval officer has opened a window into a much deeper problem: how power, privilege and protection intersects in Nigeria. What looked like a simple land dispute has become a symbol of a larger fault line, the way elites borrow the instruments of the state to secure private advantage. At the heart of the controversy is Plot 1946, a piece of land the FCT administration says is a protected buffer zone, yet it has been fenced and guarded, allegedly on behalf of a former Chief of Naval Staff. And with a serving naval officer, Lieutenant Ahmad M Yerima, posted to secure it, when Wike showed up to enforce the law, he was blocked, not by private developers, but by uniformed personnel acting on orders.
That clash has ignited an important debate when the state's coerced power is deployed in the service of private interest. Who really holds power in Nigeria? Is the uniform a neutral shield of authority or a tool in the hands of those who already have leverage? Here with us are Amachree, Dr. Dennis Amachree, a national security analyst, and David Hundeyin, an investigative journalist. Gentlemen, good morning, and thank you for joining us at Breakfast Extra.
Good morning.
Dr. Dennis.
Oh, go ahead, Queen.
Mazi?
Go ahead, Queen.
Dr. Dennis, good morning. Thank you for waking up so early to join us. From a national security perspective, what does it mean when a serving naval officer is posted to guard a piece of land allegedly belonging to a retired naval chief? Does this blur the line between state duty and private service?
Well, good morning. I think there is a little misunderstanding, in the whole scenario here. We have to understand one thing. Anytime the military person or police or whoever, anywhere in the world, when they are wearing the uniform, they are on official duty, anywhere. You find out that even in the United States here, you don't see soldiers wearing their, just wearing their uniform and moving around. They don't do that, except, well, in Nigeria, we've been able to desecrate the uniform to a very large extent, where even you see two policemen fighting. That's pure desecration, But normally, the standard is that the uniform, is a symbol of state authority, and desecrating it is a threat to national security.
What would desecrating mean? Could you give us more insight into what would entail desecration? What desecration would entail?
Desecration will mean dishonor, or assault, pointing, well, for lawyers, they know if you are talking with somebody and you start poking into their face, that's an assault. And assault is desecration. And of course, using all kinds of words, like in this particular case, when we're talking about you are a fool, and of course the officer was saying that I'm not a fool. Situations like that, is actually desecrating the uniform that the officer is wearing. And then of course it's because of the symbolism of it, it means that you are actually challenging the authority of the commander-in-chief, because he is the one that gives the commission to such officers.
Dr. Dennis, thank you very much. Here we see two arms of government, of the same government, actually going head-to-head. Now it leads to audiences to speculation or conclusions over who was right, who was wrong, or who actually really holds power, the man with the law or the man with the gun. But I'm going to come back to that, and we're going to make those definitions very soon. I want to talk to David Hundeyin. Welcome again. David, what have you found out as a private investigator about Plot 1946?
So there isn't any sort of breaking news here. I think everything there is to know about the case is already in the public domain. The FCTA insists that this plot is part of a buffer zone under the Abuja master plan. And on the, as it so often happens, this land has been acquired through some means. I'm not here to speculate to what means, but this land has been acquired by someone who used to be the Chief of Naval Staff, who has the privilege, obviously, of being protected by active servicemen. So the naval officer in the video, whose response to the FCT minister caused all this furore, he was just doing his job. He was, as he said very clearly, he was acting on an order. He was under instruction. For him, it would be an abdication of duty to have done anything else apart from what he did. So, what really stands out to me here is that the public administration of Nigeria as a country, the way Nigeria is governed as a country, has deteriorated to a point where different factions of the top level, if you like, hierarchy or oligarchy, are now having like direct face-offs and conflicts with each other. Because what we've known, or what we've come to expect for a while now, is that while Nigerians are divided at lower levels, like the middle classes and lower classes are divided through 1001 means, that the oligarchy that is in charge of Nigeria doesn't really have any internal rancor. That has been the case. It's almost become a cliche thing that we say, that regardless of whatever ethnic or religious or economic divisions exist at the lower levels of the Nigerian strata, that the people who are in charge of Nigeria don't fight with each other, that they're united. But now we have a situation where the serving FCT minister and a past chief of naval staff have become national news because of this sort of confrontation. And you and I know that this is not a simple case of the FCT minister trying to enforce the law. 9 times out of 10 in Nigeria, that's not how these things work. There's usually some sort of personality dispute or personality clash that underlies this. So, that's this melodrama that we're witnessing, I think, is like the public face of something deeper going on underneath. It signifies one of two things: either A, that the FCT minister has a personal bone to pick with other powerful people in Nigeria, and that bone that he's picking is what is playing out.
Is there precedence for this? Is there precedence for this?
So you would have to go back maybe to the Babangida or the Abacha era to find precedent for this, where the instruments of states were personalized to an extent where there was very little separation between the institutions of states and the personalities of the people behind the state. Since Nigeria supposedly became democratic in 1999, it's not as if things like this haven't happened, but it's been rare to see them at the very, very, very top level like this. So this is a bit novel. But again, to me, what this signifies is that, as I said, either A, there's that personality clash going on, or B, and in my opinion, this is the worst option, that the internal governance or the threads holding the governance structure of Nigeria together are now so frayed that we're now having elite civil wars, which will not be good news at all. And I really hope that's not the case.
Thank you. Dr. Amachree, my question now is, do you think this situation that happened would be the reason that, would you say this situation that happened is because we have some gap in security and how do I say, accountability and documentation? Because I would say if there were no cameras and then the naval officer was trigger happy, I'm sure we would have been, reporting crisis of dead bodies here and there. So do you think that there is a hole in our system? Because if they had proper documentation and he had all the necessary information, then this situation wouldn't have happened.
It said, we might be dealing with the symptoms, we don't know what's the water that is running below the bridge. I was listening to a press conference by the minister where he was mentioning that the former president, Olusegun Obasanjo, had a similar problem, and they called him, and even General Danjuma also had another one that he called him, and then of course he took care of it. So we don't know, was this a situation where they didn't call each other, or they did and they didn't agree, and then of course the admiral had to send his officers to go down there to protect, because we have a lot of cases already on ground in the public domain where there are allegations of land grabbing, and then of course demolitions and all kinds of stuff. There is even one that there was the first cadet in the Nigerian Defense Academy's land, was forcefully taken. So I think there is the administration of land management in the FCT has become one that, of course, had to be looked into properly, because you don't have to. If you have your papers, then you have your papers. You don't have to call anybody to regularize the papers. Or if you have your papers, I don't see why somebody should come and, bulldoze it and then reallocate it. I think this is there is really some serious issues going on in the FCT about land that needs to be addressed, by a higher authority, maybe the Federal Executive Council, because of course here we have the minister himself involved, and then of course you see the minister going out himself to the field. Of course, they try to justify it that, he cannot sit in his office. But if everything was working normally, there should be no reason for an appearance, of the minister in the field. There are officers, top officers, who are paid, to take care of allocation, confiscation, or whatever. So I think there is more to it than meet the eye.
Briefing, Minister Wike, the FCT minister, he did defend his action. He did say that it's not a personal thing against the military in any way, shape, or form, but that he was concerned about the way the land was acquired. He also said something about the alleged owner. He said that the land in question is linked to retired Chief of Naval Staff Vice Admiral Zubairu Gambo, and he criticized what he called the impunity of the retired naval chief for allegedly deploying active duty naval officers to guard the property. But that's beside the point. The main thing is perhaps maybe we should inquire exactly how this land was obtained in the first place. This seems to be something that's missing in the entire narrative here. How did the naval officer retired obtain that land, and what were the conditions around it? Was it from a current dispensation or a past dispensation? If this is someone who is retired, then he's been in the business for a very long time, and this might have been one of those occasions where lands were given to generals or high-ranking officials. I don't know if David has anything to say about this.
Well, I guess the only thing that I would add is that, again, which is following up from what I said earlier, this personalization of the state, which was something that began, unfortunately, under the military, and which, under the supposedly democratic dispensations, hasn't. Maybe the incidence has reduced a bit, but it still exists very much. I think that this goes to the heart of one of the issues with the nation building project that is Nigeria, which is that there has always been a lack of understanding on the part of people in power that being in having the ability to channel national resources, having oversight over national resources is not the same thing as owning national resources. That the fact that you have the ability to write land allocations, for example, doesn't give you the power or the prerogative to violate, for example, the city master plan, or to take away people's ancestral land, or to do all the crazy things that are done with land in Nigeria. I know a thing or two about this because I come from a background where some of my family members were directly involved in land administration, although in Lagos, not at federal level. And people with power in Nigeria, people with political power, use disbursement of land and favors relating to land the same way they use money, for example, for vote buying. And this is wrong. Like, this is just fundamentally wrong. First of all, it creates issues like this where 10, 20 years down the line, a new government comes in, and then whether through sincerity or through some other vendetta or agenda, goes through the initial master plan and is like, no, you need to seize this place, or we need to demolish this place, and then it becomes a whole thing. Sometimes innocent people get dragged in, all because there was greed on the part of a public official sometime in 1997 or something. This is wrong. But unfortunately, it seems to me that at all levels of the Nigerian project, both at the federal and at the state levels, those who have been entrusted with the keys to the levers of public resources really do not understand the responsibility that has been placed on them. That you have a responsibility. This is not a gift to you or your family. It's a responsibility that has been placed in your care to ensure that you use the power that you have to accomplish some sort of development, as against use it as an opportunity to enrich yourself and reward those around you for the 4 or 8 years that you will be in power. And then as soon as you leave power, you then have to hope that who is coming next doesn't, decide to fight you. And then it becomes a whole back and forth thing, which is what happens in Nigeria. And then we end up running around in circles for
David.
16, 20, 24 years instead of making progress. So I think those who have power in Nigeria, it's probably a forlorn hope at this point, and it's probably a cliche to say this, but those who have power in Nigeria, if we're ever to avoid situations like this in future, need to see the power that they have, especially when it comes to issues like land administration, as a responsibility and as a privilege, not as something that they have the prerogative to misuse.
Now, David, that seems you seem to have opened another kind of worms here when it comes to how land was allocated, especially inside of military regimes, where they were practically gifted, not necessarily with documentation, and that seems to be what is rearing its head here. I'm only just speculating here, but it does bring to the fore these kinds of issues on how these lands were acquired and the legality of it, and how that legality applies now with the current dispensation and what we have now, especially in the FCT, where there is strict regulation on land. But then the presidency also has come out to tell that everything is fine and good, that there's no rancor between the minister or the military, but that's all the information they gave. They didn't tell us exactly how this ends, what the numbers are, who the people are, so that the masses would understand the details. In such a situation, you have people who would have their own ideas of what right and wrong is, and that seems to be a systemic problem in Nigeria. Let's take a look and see what ordinary Nigerians are thinking about this issue, and then I'll come back to Dr. Amachree so he can give us his take on what I've just told. Let's take this vox pop as we went to the streets to ask people their take on the issue.
I think everything has been politicized in this country, and I believe it's not supposed to be like that, because what is happening is that man's no man. That is what they are doing, which things are not supposed to be done in that way. The way the naval officer handled the case, the matter is very professional.
We have to look at it in two ways, the Wike and the military man. It's like Wike was paid back in his own coin. You get what I'm saying? He has forgotten that you can't eat your cake and have it at the same time. So he proved his power in River State, and somebody showed him in Abuja. Ideally, he is a minister of FCT, as Tinubu will call him a landlord, and he expected that the military officer should give him some respect. Did he actually respect anyone? In Rivers State, when the event happened, did he respect anyone?
Forget about being a military officer. Even ordinary person in the society, nothing should have led, Wike to that kind of argument.
The two parties are right. Wike, by virtue of the fact that he's the minister for the FCT under the Land Use Act, is in charge of the land in FCT. And he didn't do anything outside the law. And for the naval officer too, if you know, in the military, there is a chain of command. You obey the orders of your superior. So he has to stand his grounds too, based on order.
Wike being in charge, being the minister of FCT, you need to follow the due process. The military people too must lead by example, so that others will follow.
And gentlemen, there we have it. Ordinary Nigerians giving you their take. Very diverse. People think this, people think that. And that seems to be the way it always follows after these kinds of issues or instances. Dr. Amachree, what would you consider due process, taking into account everything from the possession, who it might belong to, and when it might have been acquired, to the instance that we saw from last week between the minister and the naval officer?
Very much. Before I go into that, I would like to clear something about serving officers being attached or going to do the biddings of a retired general. I think it's allowed. It's allowed in, even with civilian presidents, they have protection until they die. There's DSS protection, or even in the United States here, they have a Secret Service protection until they die. So don't be surprised when you see a serving officer being attached or doing the biddings of a retired general or admiral. Okay, now, basically what we have seen here, what is playing out, and what people are talking about is the same. I think there's a lot of impunity going on. Impunity. And when we do things like this, sometimes we just go ahead and call it it's Niger way, or it's man no man, or something like that. How are lands allocated anywhere? Yes, we know that it's the governor that is the custodian, not that it is his own. It doesn't belong. The land does not belong to him. He's just holding it just for the public. And if, as we've seen in this case, people will be calling the minister to ratify certain things, I think that shows you that things are not normal. Things are not done properly. If people are given lands, they have their CFO. And it should be one that anybody who can have it will apply and get it. But you and I know that in Nigeria, lands are not like that, except you buy it from somebody. You cannot go and say, okay, I want land, and land is allocated to you. I think it has degenerated to a level of favors. We give something that belongs to the whole country as favor, not even on land. Think of the oil industry. Most of the oil operating licenses that are given out, where, the allocation of oil blocks is favor. Some people just walk in, and if I know the head of state or the president at any time, I can go there and beg him, and he gives me. It is not done in a formal way where you apply, you bid for it, and you get it. But all these things are given, like in terms of favor. And so it is with land, land allocations. So I think we have a lot of work to do. Right now, the disjunction, if I have to call it that, is happening, and we are seeing it. If it is a situation where everybody has to, if you want land in Abuja today, you apply, and then it is considered, and there is a vacant land, and they give it to you. That will be normal. But if I know the minister and I really want land, he can look for a land for me, no matter whether somebody is on it or not. So these are problems that we need to fix, in situations like this.
So, David, can you tell us, based on this investigation, apart from what we know, like you said, everything is already out there on socials and everything, was there anything that you found that was intriguing, apart from what we've all discussed right now, what we've talked about, that is not out there on socials at the moment?
This is just it's a very banal and very mundane. Okay, mundane is not the word, but it's a very banal issue. And this has happened so many times. The only reason this is news is because of the spectacle involving Wike and the fact that many people, you saw the people in the Vox Pop clip that you played. Many people seem a bit maybe happy that he's getting supposedly paid back in his own coin. So that's what is really generating all this reaction. But no, it's a bog standard case of misadministration coming back years later and being used either out of sincerity or out of spite as a weapon to fight the battle, and that's what is playing out here.
While we're talking about investigation, the military defense, Bello Matawalle, Minister of State for Defense, he described this as very unnecessary. He was like, there was no need for all of that spectacle, as you called it. But he also noted something very interesting. He said that the naval officer was simply just obeying orders, which is true. And according to him, he said the service chiefs had advised Wike to let the military investigate, but that Wike ignored that advice and went ahead to site. So I'm wondering if there are any points to look at here. If he already had instruction or at least advice to please wait, let's take care of this militarily first of all, then was there any need for him to appear on site? Well, he is the minister then again. So this is a very interesting question here because he does have the rights, and then there are questions regarding whatever had transpired from before. Why did he have to make such a move that seemed like as if he wanted to grandstand? And then again, what exactly is the condition regarding the land when it comes to its ownership by a military official? I'd like both gentlemen to answer this, but David, you go first.
Right. So again, this goes back to what I inferred earlier, that there's a very good chance that this is being used to prosecute some sort of personal vendetta. And if what the military authorities said is the case, then what that simply tells us is that the FCT minister has gotten into a war of a battle of wills with his latest enemy, which would happen to be the military. This is a man who has been able to impose his will on so many other Nigerian institutions, including the judiciary. So it would make sense that his next project would be to see what he can do to impose his will on the military as well. And obviously there's some pushback. The military is a very proud institution, for good or for otherwise. You obviously cannot bully the military the way you can bully a civilian. So that's what's going on here. But if this is what they've said it is, then I doubt we've even heard the last of this issue, because Wike, being the kind of person that he is going to want to ensure that everyone involved in what he considers to be a public disgrace of his is going to receive recompense in some way. So as I said earlier, this is members of the Nigerian elite using public resources, because land, even under the Nigerian constitution, doesn't really belong to anybody. It belongs to the Nigerian state. So these are members of the Nigerian elite who have political power using resources of state to prosecute personnel beefs and quarrels, which is not good news for the rest of us.
Dr. Amachree?
I agree, because, one thing is this, the Navy Admiral, the retired Navy Admiral, remember, he was the Chief of Naval Staff when I think the minister was the governor of Rivers State. And at that time, I think definitely because of the position of Rivers and all the rest, interactions must have gone on, whereby they know each other very well. It is not a matter of I don't know you and you are grandstanding. They know each other very well. So, like I said earlier, there might be things undercurrents that the public is not seeing, and I think that has to be taken care of. But the impunity, like I mentioned earlier, the impunity in whatever the minister is doing, I think should be reined in, because the commander-in-chief, I don't think will let this go, or even the Minister of Defense, or should I say the Chief of Defense Staff, because this kind of impunity brings disrepute, to the military institution as a whole, and later trying to mend it up or change the narrative is not acceptable, because actually everybody have seen this. The day it was happening, I'm in the United States here, I was seeing it live, so it is something that has gone around all over the globe. So I think there is need for the minister to do something public, either in the terms of apology. Many of the generals that have come to speak, former, Chief of Defense Staff, General Rabo, all of them have come out to speak. And this has to be corrected, because if we brush it under the carpet, I'm even surprised that there is nothing coming out from the presidency, because this thing has to be handled properly before it spills into other spheres.
Exactly.
Because when you have people in the cabinet having a clash between people in the executive itself. You mentioned earlier that this is something between two arms of government. No, it's the same arm. They are all in the executive. The military itself, and of course the presidency, all are in the same arm. And this kind of disagreement that comes to public light is not something that we should just forget about it. And people will talk about it, and then after 2-3 weeks, it's gone. I think it should be addressed properly. And then let's know the real protocol of what is supposed to happen, from the presidency, so that we can put this thing to rest.
Sir, thank you very much for saying this. My final question to you, Dr. Amachree, is how far back does this go? If we're talking about documentation of landed properties that perhaps have been gifted, and I say perhaps very delicately, have been gifted to rear admirals, it wouldn't be just one. There would be a lot of them. If this case opens up that kind of perhaps discrepancy, how many of these cases are we going to see? And how does it work in the military? How do they go about these investigations? Will there be records of these properties being handed over to these military officials, even if it was in the past?
Well, the thing is this. It is not a matter of military. Lands are being allocated to people. If you are in the military, or you are in the DSS, or you are in the police, and you want a land, or you can talk to the governor of any state. And of course, I think he will give you preference. But what I'm saying is that, how way back did it go? It has been a Nigerian system, where, like I mentioned to you, even oil blocks are being allocated to people because they know the guy who is sitting on top of it. Okay, so do we want to follow a particular format and procedure in allocating this state-owned, because these properties does not belong to anybody. They don't belong to the president or the governor, you know. And these people are in that office, after a while, they are gone. So do we now try to regularize it or normalize it where, you know, if you want land, these are the processes that you will follow? Or all lands are up for sale, whereby you want to buy land, if you have the money, you go and buy. And there are real estate agents, okay? It's not one that, you know, even the president. Remember our girls who went and played football and won?
Yes.
When they came, he gave them allocation of lands. And they were given lands. Now, what did he do? He does not have any land constitutionally under him, but of course, he will tell, if it is going to be in any state, he tell the governor, or if it's going to be in the FCT, he will call the minister and tell him, okay, allocate lands to these, our soccer players, you know, and they will do it. So, what are the formalities in acquiring land? I think that question needs to be answered, so that somebody who will come later to become the governor or minister does not say, oh, okay, this was allocated to you improperly, and I'm going to, you know, seize it or cancel your CFO and reallocate it to my new friends, you know. And it is happening all over the country. So I think it's something we need to look at properly.
Well, Dr. Amachree, thank you so much. And David, for joining us and unpacking this. You know, this video has gone viral and everybody's talking about it, but it was a pleasure to have both of you join us and have this discussion and give us, you know, shed more light as to what possibly is happening behind the scenes that we're not aware of. So we appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, gentlemen.